Her palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on her shirt already, mom's spaghetti, she's nervous. Wait, hold on. If that's what public speaking makes you feel like, this is the episode for you, so make sure you listen all the way to the end because I'm going to be sharing with you 3 super amazing tips that are going to help you deliver your next speech with confidence, clarity, and charisma. So let's get right into the show. Welcome to the Yes to You podcast, where we empower women to manifest their vision of happiness and success with down-to-earth practical guidance for conscious living, personal growth, and entrepreneurship. Our goal is to see you take inspired action by saying yes to your calling. I'm your host and founder of RohiniWellness.com, Dominique D. Wilson. And now, let's get into the topic of the hour. Welcome to episode 7 of the Yes to You podcast. I'm very excited about today's episode because I've received a ton of questions lately about public speaking. In today's episode, I get to share with you 3 of my top tips to help you speak with clarity, confidence, and charisma. Now that we're already in February, I'm looking back and gosh, this year is going by so fast. I hope that you've had an opportunity to start taking some action on some of the goals that you set earlier this winter. If you haven't gotten started yet, don't worry about it. It's never too late to take the first step. So for you, that might be downloading my free Create Your Vision workbook. You can find that at RohiniWellness.com/vision. This workbook is going to take you through 4 steps to start creating a vision for the life that you want. First, you'll look at the 8 major areas of life and do an assessment of your overall satisfaction. Then you'll look at where you can grow, where you can improve. From there, you'll be guided to write vision in each area of your life where you get to have fun and get really specific. And finally, at the end of the workbook, I've included a 30-day jumpstart plan. This is going to help you take one big goal and break it down into daily action steps so that you don't overwhelm yourself. And you can use that template over and over again for any goal, no matter what type of goal it is. This is an invaluable free resource, so be sure to go over to RohiniWellness.com/vision when you get a chance and download your copy. If you're on the go, no worries. I will include all of the resources mentioned in this episode in the show notes, so be sure to come back and check when you get a chance. And while you're at it, also be sure to go back and listen to the earlier episodes of this podcast, particularly episode 2, in which we talked about how to create a bold vision for your inspired life. And then listen to episode 3, where we talked about how to get out of your own way and overcome your fear of being seen and heard. From there, episode 4 talks about how to actually manifest your vision of happiness and success. And then in episode 5, we talk about how to put all of that together and launch a holistic business online in 5 steps. From there, in episode 6, we built a little bit more talking about blogging. And now here in episode 7, we are going to go even further on the topic of communication and talk about public speaking. Did you know that the number 1 fear, according to recent polls, now this is for people all around the globe, the number 1 fear is not even dying. It's public speaking. People would rather die than to get on stage in front of a room of people. That really says something. If you've been feeling a little bit of anxiety and nervousness around this idea of speaking, but you know that there's a message within you that is desiring to be expressed, or perhaps you know that public speaking is what's going to take you to the next level in your career, in your business, or in your community relations, this episode is for you. So you want to listen all the way to the end because I'm going to be sharing with you my 3 top tips to help you present yourself as a public speaker with confidence, clarity, and charisma. So if that sounds good to you, stick around and be sure to take some notes because I'm going to be diving into those 3 tips the moment we return from this short break. Body, mind, spirit. This is your weekly wellness tip. This week's wellness tip is on digestive health, in particular, what to do if you struggle with heartburn. Now, research shows that somewhere between 20 and 30% of American adults experience acid reflux symptoms every single week. And furthermore, just about all of us will experience heartburn at some point in our lives. If you are experiencing heartburn on a daily basis, even on a weekly basis, that's definitely something that you'll want to pay attention to so that you can be in an optimal state of health. So I'm going to share with you 6 things that you can do from a holistic perspective, and each and every one of these are things that I've actually done for myself. Now, really quickly, I want to preface this by saying if you are dealing with heartburn, make sure that you seek the professional opinion of a qualified healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your normal daily regimen. The first tip is to keep a daily food log. You want to write down the date, the time, what you're eating, what's going through your mind, and how you feel when you're eating. And do this every single time that you have a meal. And I would also add to that, go back and jot down how you feel after you've eaten. Looking at a food log that you've kept for at least 7 days will give you a pretty good idea of some patterns between what's going on with you emotionally and physically. And so you can gain a whole lot of insight, and this is going to be much more valuable than looking up a bunch of articles about how to deal with acid reflux. A food log helps you to actually get down to the source of the problem so that whatever actions you take going forward will be directed at that cause. A food log can also help you to identify some food items that you may need to eliminate from your diet, whether it be permanently or just for a while until you get things under control. The second tip I have for you is to educate yourself on alkaline foods versus acid foods. A great resource for this is Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi was a very well-known holistic practitioner whose life's work was helping people to heal themselves inside out through the power of nutrition. In the show notes, I will include a link for you to learn more about Dr. Sebi, learn more about his work, and also for you to educate yourself on alkaline foods versus acid-causing foods. A lot of times when you're dealing with heartburn, you go looking for answers. All you hear is don't eat this, don't eat that. Having a list of 50 things you can't eat is not very helpful. However, having a list of alkaline foods gives you an entire array of things you can eat. So rather than focusing on a bunch of things you shouldn't be eating, you can spend that energy and that time putting together meals from an entire list of foods that are going to help you to balance out the chemistry of your body. The third tip I want to share with you is to be mindful of the impact of stress. Stress can be a huge proponent when it comes to your ability to digest food, your ability to eliminate food, your ability to absorb nutrients from your food. Stress can really do a number on you. So you want to make sure that you're taking time for you and be realistic. We live in a society now where it is popular to be positive and to think bubbles and sunshine all the time. But no, that is not realistic. We need to be honest with ourselves about how we feel. If you are grieving over something, if you are sad, if you feel heartbroken, these things start off in the energetic realm. They start off in the emotions, but later, if they're not processed in a healthy way, they can become physical and lead to things such as heartburn. The fourth tip for dealing with heartburn is to make sure that when you're having a meal, you avoid drinking anything. I recommend you drink about 8 ounces of water 30 minutes or so before you start eating. When you drink during a meal, what happens is you water down your stomach acids, and those acids are needed to break down the food. So more acid is produced, and then that acid splashes up the esophagus, and there you have it. Typical case of heartburn. Tip number 5 is to eat smaller meals. If you're eating 3 large meals a day, you might need to break that up into 6 small meals a day. This way, you give your body a chance to digest that meal completely, and by the time you have your next small meal, your system is ready to go again. And here's the 6th and final tip. Sleep slightly elevated. Now, of course, these 6 tips are not a definitive list of how to deal with heartburn, but I chose these specific tips because they're the ones that are not talked about as much, especially the acid versus alkaline foods. So be sure to check the show notes for links to all the information and resources that I've shared here today. And here's a bonus tip. The next time you go to see your healthcare practitioner for anything, take your food log along with you and discuss that with them. I certainly hope these tips have been helpful for you. And now let's get back to the show. Welcome back to the show. As I said, I'll be sharing with you 3 tips that you can use to express yourself with clarity and confidence as a public speaker. I want to make a quick announcement first. If you haven't already, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. When you leave me a review, it lets me know what I'm doing well and what I can improve upon so that I can be of greater service to you. With that said, if you have an idea for a future show or you have any questions about what I'm covering on the podcast, don't hesitate to shoot me an email at feedback@yes2youpodcast.com. As I was saying earlier, public speaking is a skill, which means it can be learned, and if it can be learned, it can be perfected. I remember when I was just getting started with public speaking, I knew I had a message that I wanted to share, and I was so excited about sharing it. But the thought of actually getting up in front of a group of people and going through with it completely freaked me out. Now, it didn't stop me from taking that action, but it made me so uncomfortable, and I couldn't stand that feeling of my heart pounding out of my chest to the point of me thinking that everyone in the room could literally hear my heart because it just seemed that loud to me. My palms being sweaty, my knees doing that awkward trembly thing, and me wondering, can anyone see my knees trembling while I'm talking like this? And, that sick feeling I would get in my gut, in the moments before I was going to go up on stage. Even though I would deliver my presentation, I couldn't stand that feeling. And so I wanted to figure out, how can I get to a point where I can speak in front of people and deliver my message without this fearsome mental blockage of nearly having a panic attack before I go on stage? And I don't remember who it was that I heard say this, but there was a woman talking about getting up on stage as a public speaker and not seeing that nervousness as actual nervousness, but reframing your mind to see it as your power. And I thought, what if I've been calling this fear? What if I've been calling this thing nervousness or panic or whatever term you want to label it with? But really, I've been mistaken. This is what it feels like to stand in my full power, and I'm just not used to it because I haven't put myself in enough situations to where that feeling is that familiar to me. The last time I remember feeling that way, I was taking a jog towards dusk, and there was a chain link fence, but it was so dark outside, I didn't see the fence. There was a pit bull behind the fence. Pit bull comes running towards the fence, and let me tell you, I took off like nothing you've ever seen before. That fear that filled me with such adrenaline literally made me breathe better. I ran faster. It was unbelievable because I was terrified that this dog was coming at me, and I didn't even know that there was a fence between me and this huge dog. So that was the last time I could remember feeling that same feeling that I felt before getting on stage. And what I realized is that she was right. That feeling was my power. And so my mission from there was to find out, how can I anchor myself into that power and use that to deliver my message with charisma in a way that makes an impact, no matter whether I'm speaking to inform, persuade, entertain, or inspire. And from that moment onward, my whole experience of public speaking has never been the same. I really enjoy it. I'm a lot more confident. I'm able to deliver a message and deliver an impact, and people actually come up to me afterwards to confirm that so that I know that I'm growing and they're also getting something out of the message. So I want to share some tips with you today. It doesn't matter if you want to be a professional speaker or if you are just going to be speaking in a PTA meeting or perhaps meetings at your job, your business, doing webinars, making videos online. Speaking is speaking. If you're speaking to a small group or a large group, the method is no different. At the foundation of public speaking, there are some things you need to have in place, and if you can create that foundation for yourself, you will be well on your way to speaking with clarity, confidence, and charisma. So, I've broken today's tips down into 3 P's: planning, preparation, and presentation. So let's talk a little bit about planning. Whenever you have a speaking opportunity coming up, whether it's something you've created for yourself, maybe you just want to make some videos for your YouTube channel, or you actually have a speaking engagement somewhere in the community, you want to begin with the end in mind. And by this, I mean having a vision. This is why in the beginning of this episode, I recommended that you download my free Create Your Vision workbook. The more practice you get creating a vision for what it is that you want to achieve, the easier and the more natural it'll come for you when you are planning another opportunity. It's no different when it comes to speaking. You want to know your why. Why do you want to speak? What is the purpose of your speech? Once you know what your purpose for speaking is, you want to think about who your audience is. Are you speaking to a group of young professionals? Are you speaking to youth? Are you speaking to a women-only audience? Are you speaking to a diverse group? Are you speaking to an elderly group? So have an idea of who you'll be speaking to. Then, after you have a purpose, you have an idea of your audience, that's when you want to actually come up with your speaking topic. If you try to come up with the topic of what you're speaking about before you've done these other things, it'll be a little bit more difficult because you don't really even know if that topic is going to be relevant to that particular audience. So I always say, have a vision, know what the purpose is, why you even want to share this message, then who you want to share the message with so that you can actually figure out what message to share. Once you have your topic, you've jotted down maybe a quick phrase, few words of what you want to talk about. The very next step you want to take is to answer this question. What do you want the audience to get out of your speech? What do you want them to take away? This is your call to action. So the planning phase is starting with your vision, knowing your why, your purpose for speaking, knowing who you're talking to, knowing what you're talking about, which is your topic, and knowing what your call to action is. Once you have those 5 components, you are ready to actually start preparing the speech. So that was the first stage, the planning stage. The second stage is a preparation stage where you really get to work on the speech itself. When it comes to preparation, the very first thing you want to do is to look at that topic that you came up with in the planning phase and list 3 to 5 key points that you'd like to convey to your audience about that topic. So you've got your topic, you've got your purpose, you know who your audience is, you've got 3 to 5 key points that you'll be making. Those 3 to 5 key points are going to make up the body or the meat of your speech. And if you want to think of this as a sandwich, you now have all the contents of the sandwich. The only thing you need are 2 pieces of bread. One slice of bread is going to be your introduction to the speech, and the other slice will be the conclusion, and that will go around those 3 to 5 key points you've made. If you go back and listen to episode 6 in which I talked about blogging, around 17 minutes and 25 seconds, I talked about my sample blog post template. This is going to be pretty much the exact same thing you're going to want to do anytime you have a presentation. It doesn't matter if your presentation is an hour long or even just 5 minutes. This framework is really going to help you to structure your ideas. And once you get this down, you can improvise and change things up and add in some more components as you see fit. So make sure that you go back and listen to that portion of episode 6. So now that you have the body of your speech, you've come up with 3 to 5 talking points. Maybe you've thought of a few things you can say about each of those. You have the body of your speech. Now you want to get organized. There's nothing worse than listening to somebody talk for even 5 minutes and they're all over the place. You don't know if the speech is still beginning or if this is the content or is it almost over. The person's just all over the place. It becomes a big dozer and it's really hard for you as a listener to take away anything valuable because you're literally just having a stream of information thrown at you. So organizing your speech is just as important as the actual content in the speech in the way that you deliver the speech. You want to organize your speech into a clear introduction, a body, which is those 3 to 5 key points, and a conclusion. And you want to make sure that you add in that call to action that we talked about a few moments ago in the planning stage. That is going to be huge. When you are speaking to an audience, you want them to walk away with something. That call to action can be anything you want it to be depending on what the purpose of your speech is. Your call to action could be to invest in your services, to purchase something from you. Let's say you have a book or some products available. Your call to action might be a challenge to the audience, something to get them to think deeper. It could be anything, but just make sure you have it because if you don't give your audience a call to action, they're all going to say that was a great speech, but in their mind they're thinking, what should I do now? So that's how to organize your speech. So we talked about content and organization. The third part of the preparation phase is actually rehearsing. You want to make sure that you rehearse your speech at least 4 times without notes. I highly recommend that you do not use notes or note cards when you speak, and here's why. When you are speaking in front of a group and you have a piece of paper in your hand with your notes or your note cards, it sends a subliminal message to you that you're not as prepared as you'd like to be for that speech. Now that alone is going to negatively impact your confidence. You may feel like, having notes will make me feel safer. But is that really true? If you have to disconnect from the audience for a second to look down at your notes and then continue your speech, is that really helping you to be more confident? Is that helping you to speak with more charisma? So I encourage you to make sure that you spend enough time rehearsing your speech without notes. If you can rehearse that speech all the way from beginning to end without notes and get through it 4 times, trust me, you got it and you will be fine. That brings me to my next point. I highly, highly discourage memorizing a speech. There is nothing more boring than listening to someone talk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, however long, and they sound as if they're reading off of paper, but the paper is in their mind. You can always tell when someone's memorized a speech. It is very robotic. There's no connection. There's no energy because it's literally just going from point to point to point. And it takes away from your ability to be present because your attention is actually focused on the script you kind of have in your mind. That's not what you want to do when you're speaking to a group of people, whether it's in person or even virtually. You want to make sure that you know your material, you feel comfortable enough with it to where you can speak from a place of authenticity. This allows you room to actually connect with your audience, to engage a little bit more. You might improvise, and you can adapt the speech for what the audience needs. I'll give you a great example of this. Recently, I conducted a training for a group of young professionals on how to use social media. Since we had a smaller group, I did a bit of an icebreaker with the group, and one of the questions that I had each individual to answer when they were doing a brief introduction for themselves was, what do you hope to get out of this training? There were a bunch of different responses, but I kept hearing Facebook. Facebook this and Facebook that, Facebook. Now, I had all of these slides in my presentation to talk about different platforms, but what I did is because I was connected to my audience, I knew my material before I came into the room, I was able to actually tailor that presentation. So once we got to the part where I was covering Facebook, I went deeper and I spent more time talking about Facebook, and I shortened the time I talked about the other things because they didn't need that information as bad as they needed to know about Facebook. And let me tell you, these people were raving afterwards. They came up to me, they were like, oh my gosh, I've been struggling with Facebook for this amount of time, or I didn't know how to use it before, or I've been using Facebook, but I never even thought to do these things that you suggested. Thank you so much. And so I realized even more the value of making sure that you know your material before you come into the room, because you never know what your audience needs. And if you have a preset agenda that I'm going to talk about this, and this, and I've memorized it from start to finish, then what if someone asks a question and it throws you off because it wasn't in your plan? So memorizing your speech locks you into a box where you're not flexible enough to go with the flow. What makes public speaking magic, where the real transformation happens, is when you can make that connection to your audience. You feel it, they feel it, and they know that they're heard and that they're going to get what they need out of the speech because you're really listening to them. You're not just talking at them. You're talking to them, but you're also listening to what they need. There's a flow going back and forth through your entire presentation. That flow is not possible, number one, if you're using notes, and number two, if you've memorized your presentation. So trust me on this. I've done this enough times to know that you can do it. If you go through that presentation, I don't care how long it is, find some time where you will be alone, go through it 4 times without notes, and trust me, you've got it. You know what you're going to talk about. Have faith in yourself, and when it comes time for you to present, you'll be just fine. So content, organization, and rehearsal, that comprises the preparation stage. Now let's move on to the third stage, which is presentation. When it comes to presentation, one of the most powerful tools that you can use is visualization. Now, it's important, of course, to rehearse your speech and all that, but you also want to take some time to close your eyes and visualize giving your presentation, whether that is a speech on a stage somewhere, or sitting in front of a camera, or even recording a podcast episode. Visualize yourself giving that presentation with absolute clarity, confidence. Visualize your audience just loving it, having the impact that you want to have. Some of the nice things that people come up and say to you after the speech. Visualize all of that going perfectly well. And the reason I say this is because visualization is a very important tool. Athletes use this all the time. They visualize a play before they even go out on the field. And when they're sitting in the locker room, they visualize themselves making a play with absolute success. And then what they do is, because they've already seen it in their mind, They literally just go out on the field and execute, and it has a very high success rate. Musicians do this as well. It's a very, very important thing. So use the power of your visualization. The next thing you want to do when it comes to presentation is to arrive early. The last thing you want to do is to be rushing to where you have to be to speak. You're already nervous about being late. You're already nervous about speaking. One thing piles up on another and you are just a hot mess. So make sure that you arrive early. This gives you a chance to breathe, to get a feel for the space. Walk in, talk to a few of your audience members, get to know them so that you'll have some people that you've already established a bit of a rapport with. It'll literally just help you to center your energy so that you can, as I said earlier, anchor into your power and use that when speaking. When it comes time for you to actually walk onto that stage or you're about to press go live, the first thing you want to do is breathe. I know this sounds very simple, but it is a very crucial step. Oftentimes we feel like silence is uncomfortable. So what I've seen a lot of speakers do is the moment they get on stage, they start talking. Before you even get a chance to catch your breath, your heart's already pounding, you run out of air. It gets awkward and it puts you in a position to where you don't have a chance to anchor yourself into your power. It may seem like you're just staring at the audience forever. Trust me, it's not. What seems like 30 seconds to you on stage is literally a half a second to the audience. So when you come on stage or when you hit that red go live button on Facebook or whatever it is, take a moment to look out at the audience with a smile. Breathe into your abdomen. Feel your belly fully expand. As the air is about halfway exhaled, start talking. That breath is what's going to carry you like a wave through the entire presentation. Do this and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Another thing, when you are presenting, never apologize. If you were a few minutes late, if you forgot a point, or if your PowerPoint presentation isn't functioning correctly, don't say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I was late, but I'm glad to be here, or sorry, my thing isn't working right now, or sorry, I screwed that point up. What I meant to say was blah, blah, blah. Anytime you apologize to your audience, it automatically decreases your credibility as a speaker in the eyes of the audience members, and it lowers your self-confidence. Most of the time, speakers make mistakes on stage. The audience doesn't even know. We don't know unless you tell us. So don't tell us you made a mistake. If you pause, if something goes awry, if you're late, take that breath and deliver the presentation just as you would if everything went perfectly. Never compromise the integrity of your presentation because of what you think someone else is thinking about you. And the most important thing is to know this. Your audience wants you to succeed. Even though you may feel like, oh my God, these people think this about me, think that, don't listen to those things. Your audience is rooting for you. They want you to succeed. They're excited about your presentation. So just know that even though they're sitting there looking at you, they're with you. You have their support. So deliver your presentation with grace and confidence. Have faith in yourself. Trust in you. Now, if you haven't already, make sure that you go back and listen to episode 3 in which I talked about how to overcome your fear of being seen and heard. I also have a blog post that I will link in the show notes entitled 6 Tips to Gain Self-Confidence. Between these 2 resources, you'll have a lot more tools in your arsenal to develop yourself as a speaker, to develop your confidence so that you can again deliver your message with clarity, confidence, and charisma. So there you have it. We talked about the planning stage, preparation, and we talked about presentation. My hope is that now you have a few more tools that you can use to empower yourself the next time you have a presentation to deliver. Of course, this episode was just an overview to provide you with some tools to help you get started and increase your confidence as a speaker. But if you want to go deeper, if you feel like you need a little bit more support, I'm at your service. I offer private mentorship in 2 forms. We can work together in a 90-minute virtual intensive, or you can also take advantage of my 4-week mentorship program. You can find all of that information at rohiniwellness.com/services. And of course, I will link all this for you in the show notes. Before we close, I want to share a quick affirmation with you, of course, from the Heart Thoughts Affirmation Cards by Louise Hay. And this affirmation says, I appreciate the opportunity to help, contribute to, or serve others. I connect with the creativity of the universe and allow it to flow through me in fulfilling ways. I thought this was a beautiful affirmation, especially when it comes to wanting to express yourself and share a message that's going to help uplift and inspire other people. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you tune in next week, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time for episode 8, in which we will be talking about how to eliminate scatterbrain so that you can stay focused on your goals and be consistent. In the meantime, remember that you get to choose how you show up. Love yourself fiercely, own your story, and say yes to your calling. It was a pleasure to have you join us for this episode of the Yes to You podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to visit rohinniwellness.com/vision to download my free PDF starter guide, the Create Your Vision Workbook. If this episode was helpful for you, please leave us a review on iTunes. Also, when you share this episode on social media using #YesToYou, we'll give you a shout out on a future episode. We look forward to inspiring you next time, right here on the Yes to You podcast.